It's setting it up. All right, so Russ, I'm going to share this out, so just give me a second.
Okay.
So hold on, bear with me. Yeah. Hold on, Russ, I gotta. All right, hold on. So we're All right, so hold on, Russ. Just bear with me. I'm sharing it on Facebook real quick while everybody gets in. Hold on. I'm going to share it to the different groups. I'll put it on. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the groups I share it to. So Thin Silver Line. I also share it to, my Facebook page, Tear Talk Facebook page. And then I also share it to, all right, so we share it to Hey CO. You remember there?
Yep.
All right, we also share it to, hold on. I got that new group that I shared to, Steve Menard's group, Cuff Key Nation.
Yeah.
So I share it to that. A few more groups. I also share it to Correctional Lives Matter.
Oh, very good. I gotta go to the restroom. I'll be right back.
All right, copy. I also share it to Blue Lives Matter USA. I also share it to Keepers of Chaos, which is Russ's group. And then we also share it to the Correctional Officer Brotherhood. And that should be good enough. Correctional Officer Brotherhood. Correctional. There it is. Okay, that's all the groups we share there. All right. And then now I go to YouTube here. Guys, I wish I could have this set up beforehand, but I don't. So now I go back to the YouTube channel. And then I go in. And then we start to get ready for the questions that will be asked. So we are live now, waiting for Russ to get out of the bathroom. And we already got Rich. Hey, Rich, congratulations. That's first day of the academy. How did that go? He said today was a success. Explain to us what a success is in the academy. Just curious. And Garvin says, hey, guys, love both your channels. Been working corrections for a little over a year. And I've learned a lot from the both of you. Hey, Garen, I appreciate it. Hey, Garen, if you have any questions, let us know. I'd be happy to answer it. And guys, I'll be honest with you guys. We love when people are able to take the stuff that we offer on this channel and apply it to the real world. I mean, that's what really makes this matter. This channel would be nothing if it wasn't for the brave men and women who actually have the courage to try what it is that we suggest. Hey, Russ, real quick. So we're starting to get people. We got 7. I shared it out to the different groups, but I just want to mention, so Rich Spurgeon, first day of the academy today was a success.
Yay!
Remember those academy days, Russ?
Do I remember them? Gosh, the academy for me was it was a great time. Man, it was also a time though that was filled with some really personal difficulties at the time. So it was just there's a lot of things for me to look back on, it was a time where I was really coming into my own and really being challenged in a significant way, really for the first time in my life. But I also had at that time some personal tragedies in my life, and so it was a very difficult time for me to be away from home right then. But yeah, I do remember it with an awful lot of fondness, especially since I went on to do the things that I've done and to continue it on even after I was able to retire.
For me, I really enjoyed the academy. I know it's crazy because at that moment, hey, Rich, I'll be honest with you, man, at that moment, it's stressful. I mean, because it's new and, they're trying to create this good foundation for you. But after it's all said and done, the academy is something I truly miss. So, I mean, just enjoy the moment. I know that's hard to say right now because of all the stuff you have to accomplish. And ultimately, it's be the best you. You're not competing with anybody else. You want to go in and you want to be better than what you were when you came in at the end. So I think that, enjoy this moment, really invest in it. Because I can't believe the academy for me was almost 19 years ago. That's how fast time flies. But I will tell you one thing, guys. The one thing that's good about the academy is it does try its best to bring us together, to let us know that we have each other's back. It tries to bring in that family mentality. And sometimes they do that by wanting us to hate the instructors. They try to reinforce that us versus them mentality. So it's like the recruits versus the instructors until later on, then eventually they let you live a little. But at the very beginning, they're trying to, they're a little rough on you because they want you guys to be more cohesive. So never take it personal. It's an effort to build a bond between you and your brothers and sisters that you will be spending the rest of your career with, regardless of the prison that you're at. But enjoy this moment. I know it's stressful, but really enjoy this moment because it flies by. And next thing you know, man, you wish you could have it all back. It's crazy as it is, but I did enjoy those moments. Garen Barrett says, "Hey guys, love both your channels. Been working corrections for a little over a year, and I've learned a lot from both of you." Hey Russ, when you were stepped away for a sec, you know what I was telling Garen? I think what's great is, and what's really rewarding about what we do on this channel is, hold on. Sorry about that. Someone tried to call in. Let me put do not disturb on this. Hold on, guys, because I don't know who that is. Bear with me, guys. Hold on.
We'll be right back as soon as he manages to,
I'm back.
The Bosch. There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I forgot to put do not disturb. Hey, so one thing that I like about Garen is, he says that he was able to, learn a lot from us. And I said the courage doesn't come from just watching the channel and learning. The courage comes from trying what we're teaching. There's a lot of courage in that. Like, we're offering out all this advice, and it really humbles me when people tell me, especially in this profession, that they listen to our advice and it works. I mean, how powerful is that, Russ?
Oh, it's great to hear. I like to think of myself as kind of the guy who's able to kind of, give you guys some shortcuts, some workarounds and things like that to try and, chop some years off of the training it takes to be really good at this. I wish that I'd had this. I could have taken a bunch of years off. I could have been so much more efficient. I could have made so many more busts. Maybe I would have gone on to maybe promote a little bit higher up or something. But I really take it as an honor to be able to, point at this. At the same time, you guys kind of have to do your own thing, though, too. You're going to come up with, new ways to observe things, new ways to try and experiment and deploy different tactics and strategies. And, one of the things I used to say is it's like my own little living laboratory. And I would try and, figure out things that would work the best. I'd learn how to read body language. I'd set things up so I would know what was going to happen, but be able to watch them at the same time. And then when I would see it later on again, where it wasn't something that I had set up, then I would kind of be able to clue in that much faster to what was going on the yard. And it just made the whole place a whole lot safer. We had many instances at my last institution, even the one before that when I was at San Quentin, where it was just, there'd be, maybe hundreds of inmates involved in a single incident. And so, you really had to stay on top of your toes, because just aside from that, there were all the individual actions and reactions that you were involved in with inmates. So, if I can do something that, shortens that learning curve and still gets you everything you need, that's what I'm here for. That's what Anthony's here for.
Yeah, Justin says we need a blooper reel. Justin, we have a lot of bloopers. One day I'll have to go through the channels or through our videos, because I actually don't delete them. I promote them. The one I had that I thought was pretty funny was, it's hard to find. I got to find it, but it's when I was drinking coffee and they put no sugar in it, and it was just bitter and horrible. It was funny. Justin also mentions he thinks it's a success until the instructor rips him apart on their uniform and boots. I'll give you a little story. So when I was in the academy, we had this thing called the bush. You didn't want to get caught in the bush because that's where you kind of like you do all the push-ups. They kind of mess with you. And one time they woke us up at like 2 or 3 in the morning because someone left a Snicker bar candy wrapper in the sink. So I'm a very light sleeper. So I noticed the sergeant at the time. He worked overnight. He's pacing up and down. I was like, this fucking guy's gonna wake us up. So we're trying to figure out what it was because we had to live there at our academy. We had to live there for about 4 months. So close to 4 or 5 months. And we would go home on the weekends. So it was like 2 in the morning, whatever. And by the way, guys, I went to the academy dead of winter. So I live in Jersey, so it gets cold. I started the academy December 2nd of 2002 and graduated towards the end of March. So I remember, this. It was literally, I heard the pacing and I was like, and then I heard the sergeant yell, everybody up. So we all, and you know what's funny? It's nerve-wracking. Guys, I just want to tell you something, not to scare you guys. It's nerve-wracking at the time, but when you look back, it's actually pretty funny because, so we get up and we're all like, this is some serious shit. You know what I mean? And we're wondering what the hell happened. And he's pacing up and down for about a good, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And then he just says, and it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. Who left the Snicker bar candy wrapper in the sink? And we all kind of knew who it was because it was this guy that really liked candy. But it was funny because we all looked towards him and like, you son of a bitch. And then went right back to us. And so we all had to go outside and get in the stand or whatever, the push-up ready position and just kind of do like these intense 5 push-ups where you just hold yourself in this one position. And by the way, it's bitter cold. So we didn't even have a chance to, dress up. But those are the moments you don't forget, again, I mean, it's serious at the time. Don't get me wrong. It's no joke. But after you survive this profession a little bit and you go back and you look at the fun times, I think the academy had a big part of, why I kind of started loving this profession. So guys, enjoy the moment. It's not as intense as you may think it is, as long as you get through and be the best you can be. Hey, Chaos says, check out Russ. A little late to be looking so fancy. Russ, you got the tie, looking good.
Okay, so I'm gonna let everyone in on the reason that I'm wearing what I'm wearing is because I'm tired and I'm lazy. And even though I'm retired, I have a full-time side gig on some other things that I do. And I got home and I knew I was going to be doing this tonight. And I had some other lessons to write and things like that. And I just said, man, I'm just leaving it on because you know what, by the time I dig through things and every time my wife goes to her sewing class, it throws me off because, she knows where, if I need to know where something is, or she'll get it for me and do all this wonderful stuff that she does. And, but tonight it was just, no, I'm just sticking with what's on until right after we're done. And then I can get out of this, monkey gear and get on with relaxing for my night.
All right. So we got some questions coming in. We have about 20 people watching real quick, but we have some questions coming. First off, Garen says something. And I just want to say thank you, Garen. I appreciate that. I do have a book on inmate manipulation. And Garen says your talks about inmate manipulation and the psychology involved with the job is some of the most important things, stuff I learned from you all. It saved me from a lot of potential problems. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time and obviously watching what I do. I don't know if you read the book, and then just being invested in that and believing in what I'm providing. That means the world to me, Garen. So I appreciate it. Guys, I do have a free inmate manipulation course if you're interested. Email me at gangianthony@yahoo.com and I'll send you the link. It's about 9 videos. And it's modeled off the book. So if you can't afford the book, not a problem. I got the course for free. Just take it. And Russ also has a course on complacency. Russ, what's your email if somebody wants that?
You can get a hold of me at either sierra.sargent@gmail.com, or if you're ready to copy this down, custoslupi@gmail.com. CUSTOSLUPI, literally translated keepers of wolves at gmail.com. So custoslupi@gmail.com.
All right. So, and guys, as I said, the courses are free. So if you can't afford the books, not a problem. We'll give you some of these courses. And just as detailed. So you're not losing out on anything. Okay, so Ishmael, first question. I'll be working as a detention officer at the Sheriff's Department in West Texas 2 weeks from now. By the way, congratulations, Ishmael. That's great. Welcome to the family. I just got the green light today. How do you guys respond to rude comments from inmates? So, Russ, you want to do this one first?
Okay, yeah, rude comments from inmates are those things that they're testing you. It's for them. It is both personal and professional on their part. If I can use such a thing as professional with regard to an inmate, but the thing is you want to approach it from the standpoint that you want to figure out how many battles you want to be facing during your entire career. So if you let all this stuff just slide off your back like a duck and whatnot, you're going to be fighting these things all the time and stuff. So what you just want to do is you just want to naturally get in there and put tension on them over time. It doesn't mean that you have to get in there and use force, and none of that's called for and stuff. But you know what? They call attention to themselves. They probably want you to search that area. Maybe they want you to, search on each side of them, in the cells beside them. Maybe, their friends deserve a little bit of extra attention. And what you just got to do is you can't let that fester, because what happens is if you just decide that, well, I'm going to be stoic about it and I'm not going to, I'm not going to show any emotion and stuff. Well, you don't necessarily have to show emotion, but what you do have to do is you have to nip things in the bud. If you want to spend all of your time having to deal with stuff like that, then ignore it. If you want to fight the fight right now and stamp it out for all eternity, that's what you should do. That's what I did. I'll tell you, to be honest, especially the later years of my career, I rarely had any kind of super negative interactions with inmates. That's not to say I didn't bust them. That's not to say that I wasn't targeted several times for assault. That's not to say that, I didn't have some bad things happen, but those were interactions that were just in the course of business. Those were not things that happened, because they were testing me anymore, because they already knew it was going to happen if they did test me. And that's not trying to come off and be, trying to be some kind of, super hardcore officer or anything like that. That's just what you do in order that you don't have to fight all those fights in the future. So over a very short period of time, if you appear very professional, if you appear very knuckled down, if you appear where you are not going to take those kinds of things, then you'll short circuit that. And there'll be a lot less of that, except maybe with some knucklehead youngsters that still are trying to prove themselves. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, hey, Ishmael, by the way, don't be so nervous. He says that appreciate you all. Classes starting directly at the jail before the academy. Listen, well, let me answer your question first. I love what Russ said, so I just want to compliment it. Before I do, Mama Z's Texas Kitchen is in here. So if you get a chance, guys, check out her channel. She's got some good food and she teaches you how to make them. Hey, guys, we have about 27 people in the room. So I want to give that response back real quick. So, guys, I like what Russ said. Being professional in an unprofessional world is one of the hardest things that we have to do. But we always have to remain professional. And there's certain things within our prescribed role that can also show the inmate that we're not tolerating that. So having said that, if you know the inmate's being disrespectful, like Russ said, maybe it's time we search their stuff. The key here is that we always have to maintain a level of control. So sometimes they want us to have that back and forth with them because they want to lose that level of control, and we can't allow that. So what we do is we reestablish that level of control by taking advantage of the things that we're allowed to do, like that extra search. I'll give you the inconvenient search, if you will. I'll give you a thing that happened to me, and I thought this was the best advice. So I started my career working with females. So these are two stories that actually I employed the same strategy, and they worked. So I started my career with females, and when I first got in to this profession, I had an issue with one of the females where I would give her a directive. Now, she would still do the directive, but she had just this mouth on her, and she would just constantly mouth off. And I think I've covered this on Tier Talk before. So for me, being young, I was protective of my perception of authority. So the last thing I wanted her to do was kind of mouth off. I wanted that compliance with, not without having her mouth off. Now, mind you, when I was giving her the order, she was around a bunch of inmates. Now, even though she was still doing what was expected, she still was mouthing off. So it made me kind of go back and forth. And the whole time, from my perspective, I'm thinking that I got control. Now, I had a senior officer in the office watching this interaction, and he's a great senior officer, guys. He kind of let me learn by trial and error. And he saw me going back and forth. And when it was done, he calls me in the office. He goes, "So what do you think happened there?" I was like, "Nah, man, this inmate, she challenges the order. I give her the order. She constantly challenges it. And then she just says like these little snippy remarks. And he goes, "Well, how do you think you handled it?" So I think I handled it well. Even though we went back and forth, she still did what she was supposed to do. And he goes, "Listen, Gangi, you can't go back and forth with like that, with an inmate. Can't do that." He goes, "What you're going to need to do is, I bet you, if you pull that inmate aside and address that inmate away from her peers," because by the way, guys, she was surrounded by her peers. So her peers were reinforcing behavior from her that was negative, like behavior that I did not want. It was in conflict with what I wanted. So with that said, I call the female in, and she kind of does like this breath of fresh air, like, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And she goes, "Gangi, I got to have an image, so you're doing this one thing. And of course, I'm going to go against it and mouth off because that's what's expected." So I realized something, guys. The culture here for an inmate to do something correct is constantly in conflict with the peers that don't support that. So when I pulled her aside and I told her, "Hey, this is what's going on," it's kind of how I felt with it. She actually did a total 180. She listened to it, never had a problem with her since. And the second story is when I worked with men in a maximum security facility. I was a sergeant there, and I saw an inmate stealing chicken, one of our food service workers. And I caught him right when he was giving out the chicken. So mind you, we don't stand mess where I'm at. We watch it from a safe distance. So I called the person to the cage that I was in. I was above. And I said, "Yo, I just saw you stealing some chicken." He quickly responded back, "You're only coming after me because of the color of my skin." He did this whole thing. Now, I hate when inmates say that. So I became very agitated with that. I said, "You know what? When mess is done, I'm going to see you. Like, I'm not going to, this is mess. I'm going to pick and choose my battles. There's a time to choose your battles. I'm not going to do that in the middle of a mess hall and try to get them out. That's risk, and that's foolish pride." When I did remember when mess was done, I brought the inmate to the side and again had that one-on-one dialogue with the inmate. And the inmate literally said at that moment, "You know what, Gangi, you're right. I'm sorry. That won't happen again." And I said, "All right, just let's make sure that doesn't happen again, because next time around, I'm going to make sure that you don't have that 7-day-a-week job that gives you 7 days credits or whatever credits that you're getting off a month." So it works. So sometimes that private dialogue, that one-on-one in which you establish control, that's the key. You establish control on influence by peers that would push that inmate in the opposite direction. You have total control. That establishes authority, and it's a reminder to the inmate not to do that again. But again, pick and choose your battles, because if you go at it at the wrong time, like what would have happened if I would have went into that mess hall and pulled that inmate out? Just not the time to do it. Just not the time to do it. But like Russ said, you can't let it go off your back either. It has to be addressed, because anytime there's a rude comment, it takes away from your perception of authority. And you have to protect that at all costs. So I think that answers the question. Tell me if that worked, Ishmael. Okay, so next one. I saw, hey, Russ, this comes from Xafiel. We have 23 people in here, so we're doing good. Have you ever heard of an undercover officer booked into prison population?
No, that is the stuff that movies are made of. Listen, with regards to the things that happen with intelligence at that level, there are so many guys out there vying and wanting to be confidential informants that I just don't see anyone actually doing that. For one thing, anytime that you've gone up there in court and raised your hand and testified, and there's been, a bunch of inmates around, why would you want to put someone at risk who may have been identified at some former court proceeding that you don't know about? I'm not saying that it's never happened, but it doesn't usually happen at our level. Sometimes you hear about, some long-term things being done, like with respect to RICO acts that the FBI was involved in. Some things that have happened with some larger gangs, like I think it was the Mongols. I think it was Billy Queen. He spent a lot of time actually undercover. But for the most part, the bread and butter is really right there where those confidential informants are, because they can wear wires and they've already done all this outlandish illegal stuff. And so they're a known quantity and people tend to want to run their mouths. We all saw what happened on, some of these programs like 60 days in or 90 days in or whatever it was. But those are kind of, that's still made for TV. It's not at the level where we think of as things that happen on TV. I've never seen anything even remotely like that, to be honest.
Yeah, and guys, besides the fact that we do have inmates that will probably be better sources, I really couldn't see an undercover come in unless it's for something major, which again, we have the inmates that they can utilize that are probably invested with our internal affairs divisions or our investigative divisions, because, I watched 60 Days In, and the reason why I think that show's garbage, besides the fact that it's scripted and highly edited, the other thing is why do I need an undercover person to come in and tell me that they're smuggling in drugs through food service? But why, I mean, so I'm going to risk someone's life for them to tell me that when we should know that. You should have tons of, I mean, the intel that these undercovers that they have is 60 Days In, the stuff that they bring back to the table to me is something that we ourselves will figure out anyway. We should be checking those areas. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's another way that you can think about that, right? Is what is the purpose of that person going undercover for versus something you get from a CI? Well, the only really better option is so that later that person can testify in court to it. So do you really need that testimony in court, or do you really just need someone to point you in the right direction that tells you about maybe who's bringing in a drop, when they're bringing it, and how they're bringing it? You don't necessarily need that person to go to court and say, yeah, I heard them discussing it, because they can point you in the direction and you can catch them in the act. And so you don't need them after all of that. So you just got to think about what the actual purpose is, right? Is the actual purpose to gain intel so you have a direction to point your investigation in? Or is it to have someone that's able to get up there in court and testify to it? Most of the time, you may not need that testify thing, because you can testify based on what you uncover in your investigation. Now, getting beyond probable cause, that could be a little bit more tricky, right? But if you're already in a prison setting, do you need probable cause? Nope, you don't really. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, and guys, I know 60 Days In started this whole thing with undercovers, but if you really watch that episode season from season, and you look at what they're discovering, guys, any good run facility with good dedicated staff would be able to be picking that up. Like, I mean, if I was running a facility and I needed an undercover to tell me, hey, they're making weapons in their cell, because that's a part of one too. They're making weapons in their cell. Well, I'm going to go ahead and automatically assume that's what every inmate does, just to be on universal precaution. But to have an undercover go in there and come back and tell me they're making weapons in their cell, I mean, we should be on that. We should be checking those cells anyway. I'm not a big fan of that show. Highly favored 07 said, I made it past my interview. They called me to come in this week for a background drug screen and physical. I was wondering what to expect for the physical. Russ, you want to go first on that, or you want me? It doesn't matter.
I can tell you, first of all, we've got, damn near 4,000 counties, and we've got 50 states, and we've got the feds and everything like that. So everybody usually has a different form of whatever physical thing they're doing. But count on this, right? The first thing is they're going to have you do something strenuous, and they're going to measure what your heartbeat is. All right. Then they're going to do probably something with regards to grip strength. And then they're probably going to do something with regard to mass strength, like picking up a dummy and dragging it for 50 feet or something like that. The key is whatever facility you're going to work for, you can Google it and probably find out exactly what their particular physical fitness test is. Now, some places, depending on how it's couched in those terms, they may not do a physical test so much as a physical screen, right? And so they'll do some blood work. They'll maybe measure how fat you are. They'll listen to your heart. They'll ask for a family history and stuff. And they'll get past that part before you even get to an actual physical test. So just look for the way it's worded. Go online, Google that stuff, because it's going to be in there. They're going to tell you exactly what they do. For instance, this is just an example. In California, when you do the written part for peace officer status, which I've done twice now, of course, but the first time they hadn't standardized it yet, but now they have a test called the Pellet B, and it's all about reading, writing, reading comprehension, punctuation, grammar, and that kind of thing. So you can go online, you can get samples of that Pellet B test and practice for it ahead of time. So just know that anything you need to know, if you can Google it down and figure it out, you'll know exactly what you need to do in each section of the test, whether it's written, whether it's physical, whether it's backgrounds, whatever.
Right. Now, guys, check this out. So I love what Halligan Breach said, here and eye strength. I agree. Now, some of them, now mind you guys, when you're going to the academy, it is really about improvement. So at the very beginning, they probably may expect you to at least do 25 push-ups, 25 sit-ups, maybe a 1.5 mile run in under 15 minutes. Again, it depends on the academy, guys. I'm just giving you what I remember as the basics. But don't forget, guys, they're pushing you every day to become better and better. So the last thing you want is to come in being able to do that bare minimum and then leave doing that same bare minimum. So like if you come in and they expect, let's say 25 push-ups, then by the time you leave, and that's usually within a minute, I believe, when you leave, you better be able to do 50 push-ups, or whatever, because you're pushing yourself to that next level. I know people that went to the academy because the 1.5 mile run. Now, mind you guys, if it's a good academy like the one I went to, you're running every day. And you're running every day to perfect that 1.5 miles. So I've seen people that came in, this is no lie, guys, starting that 1.5 miles and barely making that 15-minute mark. And then a couple of months later, they do that 1.5 miles and they're hitting 13, 12, 11 minutes. So that just goes to show you the potential that people have if they push themselves. Now, mind you, we do have natural runners. I mean, there was a guy that I remember that could do under 10 minutes in a 1.5 miles. Again, we weren't, you could try to keep up to that pace, but that's not you. As long as you're able to improve every day. So here's the key. If you have to do a 1.5 miles in 15 minutes, and by the time you graduate, you're able to knock off a minute or two on your time, bravo. Don't look to be that guy doing 9 or 10 minutes if that's not you. Just look to better yourself, because that's another thing, guys. I want to give you another hint for the academy, guys. So academy it's competitive, but it shouldn't be. So they do try to remind each other that we need each other. Because at the end of the day, if you're running to a code at top speed and nobody's behind you, how good are you? How good are you? We all have to motivate each other to get there together in the best shape possible. So even if you're running that 9 minutes, sometimes you got to tell people, hey, brother, you're not looking for that gold star. While you were running, you left your whole team behind. This is not a me sport. This is a we sport. So having said that, part of that is the teamwork. Part of that is being there for each other and helping people get through the finish line. So yes, once you're able to help yourself, also look to help others. So we start building that family bond, because it really does start in the academy. So again, congratulations for those that are making it through the academy. It's a hell of an achievement. But I hope we were able to answer your question, highly favored. Just let me know if we answered it or not. That means the world to me, so we know if we have to, I don't want to have to re-explore, but if we do and you have another question still, let me know. Mama Z, by the way, guys, again, check out our channel. I wish I had you guys around 20 years ago. I'm so glad that COs have you guys to learn from. Hey, Mama, we're going to have you on the show. Because obviously you're not a stranger to YouTube, you're an influencer yourself. So I think it's about time we bring on Mama Z and we have some jailhouse cooking. I think that would be a great thing. Let's see.
Let me take one here. I've got it up on my iPad. I got Rick Spurgeon saying, what would you say was your favorite post as a rookie when you're getting moved around to different assignments, if you will? I had what I considered one of my funnest assignments was in the mornings. I would go in and I was the controlled seating officer for, first of all, what they called the category J inmates. Those were the crazy ones. And then the second part of my morning, I was the seating officer for the extended sentence inmates, which was everyone that had 25 years or more. And so that had me hopping early on in the morning inside the dining hall. And then after that, I was on the West Block yard and I would be out there for more or less the rest of the day. And man, it was just active yard. I mean, I had fights and slicings and stuff, but it made me very aware of my surroundings, and it always kept me on the run for, trying to find weapons or trying to find a little heroin here and there and stuff on these guys. And so that was what I considered the funnest job. I had other ones that were kind of nice to take a break now and then, but I didn't want to be in them more than a day or two at a time, which would be like a tower gig or something like that. I preferred being down on the ground, in the mix, having fun.
Hey, Jared says, I've been following you guys for ages. Love your videos. Help me get through my, oh, wow, my uncle's heroin addiction. Wow. Jared, that hits home with us. So thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that. That means the world to us. Hopefully your uncle.
I can share a little bit. I deal often in what I do now with individuals. It's not all the time, but a significant portion of them are addicted to various substances. And it's the hardest thing in the world for them and their families. And you know what? Some of those people you can reach, some of them you can make a difference in, and some you just never are, no matter what they do. And it's sad when you realize that this person is going to die in that lifestyle because of the choices that they make. I mean, no doubt about it, down to the end, it's their choice. But it's very disheartening. You think about, what if this person was in my family, and also have some personal experience with that. So that's about the most difficult thing that there is, other than an actual death.
And I want to talk about my favorite post. So my favorite post, I mean, I know some people love housing units, and I get that. You kind of got that control. I love being a general assignment, which means that I kind of maybe did the breaks for the other units, but I kind of was the one that responded to codes because I felt there was a little bit more freedom to that. I wasn't trapped in a unit. I got a chance to, socialize a little bit with the officers too as well. But I enjoyed being a general assignment post. Again, I just wasn't a big fan of housing units, wasn't a big fan of towers because I like to move around. I like to keep things busy. And I think if I was an officer again today, I would still choose that type of post. It keeps you active. But and I think, to be honest, that I also learned a lot because, again, when you're a general assignment, you kind of get a taste of all the different areas. So I definitely would recommend that. That's actually a good question then, because I definitely recommend that the first thing you should learn, I'm going to have to fix something here. The first thing you should learn as an officer, we could actually do a video on this, Russ. I'm thinking of it. Do you think the first thing someone should learn as an officer, and guys, I'm going to ask this question to you guys out here too. Let me get your thoughts. Do you think the first thing an officer should learn is one of two things? Let's do one of two things: running a housing unit, or being that general assignment and getting an idea of how the facility really runs. So, Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
There's a lot of ways that running that housing unit will serve you down the road, because there's so much involved in that. It's not, I mean, depending on what kind of a unit it actually is, I suppose, but it gives you a chance to, have to deal with the inmates, have to deal with everything that they're involved with, from going to yard to going to medical, to going to job assignments and doing all of those things. So as far as what was the other part of that, Anthony?
Well, like being I don't know if every facility has that, but being just a general assignment where you're kind of respond to codes, kind of get to learn the layout of the facility a little bit more.
So you're just in a different shift spot every day. That can force you to have to learn a lot of different things too. I know I did that essentially for my first 2 years, except I kept getting slotted into the same spots for 2, 3, 4 days in a row. And then suddenly I'd be, in a different area, maybe down in the furniture factory or something like that. So I think anything that can expose you to as many different things is good to a degree, but you start to get to a point where you really want to start to specialize and become an expert in certain things. Like mine was always, I wanted to find weapons and I wanted to do interdictions, right? And so I wanted to be in those general population units. I didn't want all that crap downtime from working in Max and just cuffing people up and taking them to the shower and all that stuff. I wanted to be in there on the hunt. Now, some people, different strokes for different folks, right? So I think that the ping-ponging around is probably advantageous for probably about your first 9 months to a year. After that, I think that you want to start learning the inmates, learning how the gang interactions work a little more, how different areas within the prison respond to what you're doing in your area, whether it's calling chow or whatever. So I think that's a really hard question to kind of nail down. But I think that first year you would be well served by that ping-ponging about, as we called it.
Yeah, I think if you have to learn a housing unit, eventually, once you get into the groove, it does get kind of routine. So if that's where they start you off, maybe a month or two to get an understanding of how it is to run a housing unit and be effective. But you really do eventually have to get an understanding of the facility as a whole. So I agree with Russ. Eventually you're going to have to get out there and start really ping-ponging as Russ is utilizing. But if they do want to start you off at a housing unit, I understand that. And I can tell you something right now, guys, and this is true. I knew an officer that I worked with. We both went to the academy together. And what happened was he was a new just like me. When we started our time at the female facility. And what happened was somebody went on leave by the time we all entered. So he took over that person's post, which was a housing unit. So he had a housing unit right off the bat, right from the get-go for, I would say, like the first year. And then what we noticed was when he didn't have the housing unit, when the officer finally came back, he was behind in what we have learned, because he was strictly in the housing unit. So he fell behind. So like, again, working with him a year later, he was asking us a lot of questions on things that we thought were rather simple and routine because, again, we have gone through that for about a year already. So I understand the understanding, to get to know the house. But after 1 or 2 months, it becomes a little routine. So now maybe it's time that you get to learn the layout of the facility. So whatever order that's got to be done. But I don't think you should. I definitely think you need to run a housing unit because you need to establish that level of control, that perception of authority. But to leave somebody there at the very beginning of their career, that may be detrimental, only because there's other things to the facility they have to learn. So eventually they're going to have to move out and kind of get an understanding of the other work areas. Jeffrey asked the question I want to get to. Can a correctional officer with a face and neck tattoo, or can you be a correctional officer with a face and neck tattoo? So I'll give my opinion first, and Russ, I'll attack this one. So first off, it really depends on the policy of the agency. The thing here is this, guys, is that we look for uniformity. I want you guys to know that there's something about us looking exactly the same way that lets the inmates know we're together. And what inmates do is they look for anything that kind of puts us apart. So if you have an officer, let's say in a uniform, and the uniform's not where it's supposed to be, and you have another officer and the rest of the officers are tight, that makes the inmate think, okay, this person's not like everyone else. I can pull that person out. I think the same thing may be considered with tattoos. Now, I'm not saying that the person can be pulled out. That's not what I mean. I'm saying it breaks away from the uniformity. So what happens is some agencies may allow you to have it, but it has to remain covered. Because again, they want you to look like everyone else that you're connected to. It brings about a sense of uniformity, and it lets the inmates know we're together. I think that's the reasoning behind it, unless I'm wrong. But what's your thoughts on that, guys? But Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so here's the thing. Like I said before, you've got 3,500 different counties and 50 states and all this other stuff with feds and stuff going on, right? So you find a particular agency that is going to let that come in. Well, even though they're going to accept neck tattoos or hand or wherever the tattoo is, right? you're still going to have to explain everything about that tattoo and what it means and where you got it and any symbology behind it. Okay, so once we're past that hurdle and stuff, be advised, don't go in there thinking that you can bullshit any of us guys that spend all of our time looking at tattoos and weeding out what they mean. So you have to be upfront and honest, and there may be disqualifiers in your honesty, bad to say. But then you get past that, and then you're going to be out there on the line, and the inmates are going to be seeing that. And like Anthony said, they're going to use that as a reason to come up and talk to you. And they're going to ask you about what that tattoo means. And they're going to tell you real or imagined about what it means where they're from. And they'll make bullshit up, and they'll use that to try and draw you out or pull you in to something that you probably don't want to be involved in. So just know that that it is going to be a detriment, no matter how much you don't want it to be. But that doesn't mean that it's a disqualifier either, right? We all have things that we have to bring with us inside. And so if you find that institution or that department that will accept that, then you have to jump over those other hurdles. And that's just all it is, right? It's just another hoop that you got to jump through.
Yeah, guys, I want to jump ahead just for a second, and then we will go back. There's a lot of questions coming in, but everybody's pointing me to a question from Chaos. So let me ask this question. But guys, I will go back. So your questions haven't been ignored. I know exactly where I left off on the tattoo one. But let me jump ahead for Chaos. So Chaos says he's a third shift lieutenant. Our facility is mostly uneventful. How can I make new staff understand how dangerous the job can be outside of drills? I'm fighting complacency with them a lot. So we're good. Russ, you want to go first, and I'll follow after you?
Yeah. Okay. So this is one of those things where, I talk about the desensitization of a certain type of complacency, right? Where you get there and things aren't happening. And believe it or not, what's actually probably going on is the inmates are lulling you into this. And they're lulling you into that because they probably have a really good conduit to some really good drugs. And they don't want that apple cart overturned because right now it's a revenue stream for them. And so whatever the cream of the crop of your STG is, they are running that shit. They're probably having to share it though with some other people that don't want to become disgruntled. Your job is to shake up the status quo and find out what's really going on before you get behind that thing. And it ends up where suddenly you have one of these unbefore heard of things out at one of these camps, and there's a hostage situation. Like I can't remember, it was one of our camps. I can't remember which one it was now, and ended up with a hostage situation up there and all kinds of stuff. You have to be letting these guys know what complacency is, and you have to be talking about the reasons behind it and about how they're being lulled into it. Inmates may be giving up game to them, to be quite honest, and you may not even be aware of it. And it's low-level things, and the inmates are just making it look like this is all there is. Someone's got, hey, you know what? Let's give up 6 packs of smokes, and then for the next month they won't search very much anymore. So you have to be bringing to them though what the reasons are for critical thinking skills, right? And these critical thinking skills are imagining what could actually be happening versus what is happening at that moment. Because you can get into a situation where suddenly you do have something that's really serious, and all of a sudden everyone's surprised and they're not ready for it, and they haven't done any pre-planning, not even in their heads. And everyone's just like, wow, I guess we were being complacent. And now we have an officer that's dead or hurt or lost his job or something like that. So the first thing you want to do is you want to identify what's really going on, right? And then you want to identify where they are hiding what they do have, because I guarantee that they do have it. And then you want to do a surprise raid on that area and have all the officers be a little bit perplexed about why they're finding so much dope and why they found some shanks in the area and that kind of thing, or why maybe you suddenly found some escape paraphernalia, maybe some clothing that isn't supposed to be there, or a patch or a badge. All of these things. When I talk about complacency, I talk about the 2 words, insidious and pernicious. All right. And it's one of those things that You know what the word is, you know what the word means, but you're convinced that you can't experience it because up to this point, you've never seen anything to indicate that you're in danger. All right. So think on those things and find a way to shake up that status quo in their head where they go, wow, this shit's real.
Yeah, guys, don't forget William Young, Just Corrections, was on here or is on here. So don't forget to check out his channel. He has very interesting content. Before I answer Chaos's question, I just want to, Andrew Southard gave some good advice. Remember we were talking about the housing units and the and being those general assignments. I love what he said here. He goes, I would say doing both benefits you from running a house. And when it comes to responses, you get better confidence in yourself and more comfortable when doing things. I agree with that. That's great advice. That kind of brings balance. Thank you for that, Andrew. So just to compliment what Russ was saying, you know, hey, Cash, you know what I tend to do is, one thing is I look to see what's happening at other facilities and let staff know. Now, unfortunately, a lot of agencies has done away with briefings. So, or what's it called? I'm sorry, not briefings. My mind's gone blank. Shift meetings, whatever it is, when you right before you start the shift. You know, because obviously there's no overlap. So now you're not being able to share information or intel. So I used to have a sergeant where we did have the overlap, read about stuff that's happening at other facilities and kind of remind you like, hey guys, at any moment this can happen here. So that was one thing I thought that was great. Also, the funny thing is you really, as a lieutenant, I know you agree, I would push on my sergeants. Now you work overnight, so I don't know, you know, maybe a little tougher because when I worked for a year, I did second shift where it was more active. And, you know, if I saw inmates walking through like a max movement and, you know, you see officers with their hands in their pockets, the supervisor would tell us immediately, to the point where, you know, we would never do it again. It used to be back in the day, they used to pinch us right behind here, but you can't do that anymore. Obviously, different laws right now. But I will tell you one thing, when you get pinched right here, you never fucking put your hands in your pockets again. This thing hurt. But again, different times now you can't do that. And you can't even yell at an officer now if they do that. But what they don't realize, guys, is it's extremely dangerous when, you know, you have a mass movement going on and a bunch of officers have their hands in their pocket, you know, just, you know, inmates are looking at that. You know, they see exactly who they can go to first because, again, you're got your hands in your damn pocket. So I would push on my supervisors on the floor and hold them responsible for complacent staff. I think in third shift, when it comes to the overnight, I think the biggest concern with complacency is the touring. I think you have a lot of people claiming that they're touring and we know they're not. You know, maybe they didn't put it in the logbook. So I think at that point, you know, you have to get your supervisors, hold them responsible so then they can hold their staff responsible. I mean, as a lieutenant, you know, you can push that on your sergeant. And then if you see a concern, I would call my sergeant right next to me and say, Sarge, what do I see here that's wrong? And then, you know, make sure that they fix it. Because again, you want to hold that supervisor accountable. If you're the one that's always fixing it, that removes the accountability from the sergeant. So that's what I would do if I was in your position. If I had officers that were being complacent, I would call the sergeant right to that scene. I would point out what I see and then walk away and give the sergeant a few minutes to handle that. And let the sergeant know if I see that again, you know, I'm going to have to address you with it now. So I expect you to be on top of your individual. So I really think it's about holding people accountable, you know, especially as a supervisor. So I got some more questions. Hold on. There's a lot of questions here, Russ. We have 21 people in the room, which is great, guys. I'm honored that you guys are spending time with us. Obviously, real quick, too. Russ actually has a PowerPoint on complacency. Complacency is a big problem because we work in a job that could be very routine. So you wind up actually getting caught in the routine. And then sometimes you actually forget the dangers that a facility actually has because you get so caught up in the routine. And believe it or not, guys, again, going back to manipulation, inmates like when that happens. They like when you're not on your toes. They like when you're caught up in the routine. So, you know, if you have to do drills or whatever it is, that's pretty good. But for the most part, it's just keeping your people mindful. I like what Russ said before about running those what if scenarios. You know, if you have a quiet time, let's run a what if. Let's keep people on their toes. The biggest thing I have when it comes to complacency, I don't know if you guys do it on overnight shifts, Chaos, but I'm assuming that you're searching public areas. You really can't search cells overnight. So obviously you're probably searching public areas. You know, you want to make sure people are 100% committed to those searches. Now, 9 times out of 10, the sad thing is you're probably not. Well, it's not a sad thing; it's actually a good thing. If you do 100% effort and you don't find nothing, that's great. And that's usually the end result of most of the searches outside of nuisance contraband. You really don't find anything, but you still have to stay motivated for each search. It's not about the outcome; it's about the process. You know what I mean? Am I giving 100% effort? Because at the end of the day, if I'm not giving 100% effort and something happens to someone because I didn't really give it 100% effort to find that weapon, I'm going to have to live with that. But it gets hard because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to discover nothing. So the key is to always stay motivated and keep people motivated. And what I did with the searches, guys, and if you have the staff to do, it's not always easy, is once in a while, we also would have a supervisor check the area afterwards. Not all the time, because you can't do it all the time, but it'll be like spot checks. So that would encourage the officers to kind of stay on their toes. So like maybe, you're doing these searches and 5 times you don't get checked, but on the 6th time, you're going to have a supervisor, like a sergeant, be right behind you to make sure that, you are doing your proper searches, because we will become complacent on that, because again, the results are just, we don't always find things. So it's good to have a supervisor just kind of be behind that, kind of, not in a predictable way, but just more spontaneous, to kind of just keep people on their toes. That works for us guys, for the most part, especially when we get to a point where we're not finding anything for a while. Now it's like, let's just make sure we're actually giving this 100% effort. And you know what's funny? Someone taught me this, guys, and I think you guys would probably agree with this. Sometimes people don't do what you expect. They do what you inspect. So just kind of always keep that in mind. Russ, you ready for the next question?
Yeah, I'm trying to run through them here a little bit. I did post my course and corrections up there, free for anyone that wants. It's seven videos.
I didn't see the link. Posted the link.
Yeah, it should be coming up. It's probably a minute or 2 behind. So yeah, let's answer them in rapid succession if they're an easy one.
Yeah, I actually we can go back up, but I did a video on this before, Ishmael, and I'll go back up. But Ishmael said, "How would you describe the graveyard shift versus the daytime shift? Is daytime shift generally busier or no?" Okay, so I actually did a whole video on this. So let me break this down a little bit, because this is actually a great discussion, because I believe a lot of our overnight shifts, they don't get the respect that the other shifts do. I got a story on that one. I worked 3rd shift as a sergeant for 2 years, and I remember going into one of the break rooms where the sergeants would break, and I literally saw a Merry Christmas card, that actually had in the card, "Thank you 1st and 2nd shift for all you do." What a kick in the ass that was for those that worked on 3rd shift. And that's when I started to realize, man, 3rd shift is really not as respected as the other 2. So let's just explain a little bit. So of course, 1st shift is going to probably be the busiest shift, because that's
Hold on. I was going to say, let's get some definitions out there first, because 1st, 2nd, and 3rd mean different things on.
Yeah, so you have some shifts that split the 12 hours, some shifts are 8 hours. So 1st shift that I'm talking about is the morning shifts. Let's say 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., whatever it is. But 1st shift in my mind is the early morning shift. 2nd shift starts to touch in the afternoon and then kind of bring it into the evening. And then obviously the overnight shift is the overnight. So, when the inmates are asleep, so let's say 10 to 6. So the morning shift obviously is going to be the most active, because that's when the real world is moving, correct? That's when everything's moving in the real world. So, a lot of stuff's happening on 1st shift, including, the civilians aspect of the job, programming, which is a big thing that's going to keep the facility busy. Disciplinary hearings, that's going to keep the facility busy. Trips, medical is going to be there, because the doctors are going to be there. Obviously have medical there 24 hours a day, but I'm saying the doctors are going to be there, the specialists. So, that part of the shift is going to be completely busy. The 1st shift has two meals, right? Breakfast and lunch. So again, it's very busy. But having said that, the world we live in, you should have the proper staffing to handle that shift. Now, the sad thing is that's not always the case, but having said that, you should have the proper staffing to handle all the stuff that's happening. Now, when you look at an overnight shift, the overnight shift's usually a skeleton shift, but I will say this, the overnight shift is responsible for prepping the night before for the shift to come. That's what they're responsible for. So technically, believe it or not, the overnight shift handles a lot of the concerns that would, that could have happened on first or second shift and make sure that we're ready and functional. That's why when I was working third shift, it was really zero tolerance. If you had a tour to do, if you had to check something, you better have checked it. Because at any point when we open up that shift on first shift, third shift is literally telling that early morning shift that we're ready to go. So is it a shift that may be more laid back? I'm not going to be 100% with that because it's a skeleton shift. There's, there is more assignments, yes, but there's not that many assignments, but it is a skeleton shift. But the tours, let's not minimize that. Third shift is where most of the concerns are going to happen. The rapes, the suicides, the assaults. So you have to be touring every half an hour. You got to be making sure that you're doing those rounds and, literally, stay up. I don't care if you have to work another job in the morning and that's why you're working third shift or overnight shift. It doesn't matter, guys. This is your job. This is what you're going to be held responsible for. And I've seen people that have been negligent in their duties not just lose their job. I just want people to know that because you're held to a higher standard. You're held to that level of trust. But Russ, what's your thoughts on the different shifts, first and second or overnight?
Okay, so the way I would put it is that you're in a lot more control over what's going on during that graveyard shift in a way, because for the most part, the inmates are locked up. If everybody has checked all of the security devices and made sure that they're not tunneling out and doing that nonsense like we saw in Clinton and that sort of thing, they shouldn't be getting out. So as long as those checks are getting done, as long as you're making sure that the security interdictions are getting done where they don't have things in their cells that they're not supposed to have and things like that, it tends to be quieter. It tends to run more on routine, which is kind of a bad thing because we tend to only expect routine. That's another part of complacency. It's the desensitization that I talked about before. But at the same time, if you're following the security protocols, the chances for something going wrong are probably less. But this is the time that somehow, no matter what, somewhere along the way, and you'll experience it in your career, you're going to have somebody hanging, and the question is then going to be, when was he checked on, and hopefully you're going to be able to have the answer there. It's going to be in the logbook. It's going to be on the camera. It's going to be on your security device that now we log in with these RFID tags and things like that. And it's going to save your job unless you lied about it.
Hey, there was a question about mental health. If you posted that, can you repost that? Because I don't know what happened, but I lost half of my comments here. But there was a good question about mental health that I wanted to address. Let me see. There's a lot of comments here, guys. Thank you, guys. I appreciate this. Hold on. Let me just see. Yeah, like what William Young says, overnights are dangerous. Run real life scenarios and make staff take them seriously. Show them videos from other facilities. All right, so Ishmael says, we did that one, sorry. I will work out, do both graveyard. Yeah, we search public areas at night. The searches are the biggest fight right now. They're half-assed to search. I address them when I find, but they still aren't thoroughly searching. Hey guys, let me mention something with that. I know I mentioned this before, but so when I was an officer, when visits were done, obviously we did a search. And what would happen is after we did the search, spontaneously, wouldn't happen all the time, but then the sergeant would kind of go over exactly the same areas that we did. And if he found something, you would have to write a report as to why you didn't discover it. So that kept us on our that kept us on our toes. So I really do think that once in a while, you need that supervisor to get a little dirty as well to keep the staff on the toes. And Chaos said, yeah, we search public areas. I like that idea. The searchers. Okay, we just read that one. Okay, hold on. Justin says my shift, which is D shift, which is 1900 to 0700, so it's overnight, is very important. In my dorm alone, I found weed, tattoo, guns, and things that could compromise mine and institutional safety, both on checks and during searches. Yeah, guys, the third shift, believe it or not, those overnight shifts, those searches in those public areas definitely can be very productive, because obviously for inmates that don't want to get caught with something, they tend to hide things in the public areas. And again, it has to be accessible. So especially, guys, if you start finding a lot of weapons in those dorms, you can kind of know, okay, something's happening. And the inmates put it in areas where they could be accessible to them. So you always kind of check where those groups hang out. Like I noticed that we used to do that in our mess halls. So basically, if you have a certain group that would hang out in a certain area, you would want to search around that area, right after mess was done, because most of the time you would find something, again, because it's quick access to them. So if something happens, they could jump and grab something. I'm sure that happened a lot with you, right, Russ?
Yeah, one of the areas that I've wrote on before, and you guys can look it up with my name and contraband almost anywhere. I'll try and post it again soon. Is I talk about working the crease, and that's those areas that are near borders between STGs, where they need to be able to get to something quickly in order to defend themselves, their territory, to carry out an attack, what have you. And so those areas in the crease, very important to hit those areas, because those are where they're going to be putting those weapons.
Yeah, and what's, I'm going to tell you something. If you have supervisors that complain about paperwork, they need to be put in check. One of the big things about becoming a supervisor is that is going to be your responsibility. And I know a lot of supervisors that unfortunately they want it to be easy and they want to collect that money, but that's not the case. You have to commit to that paperwork, because in the end, if you're sloppy with that, the inmates start beating those charges. And so all the hard work that officer committed to and finding that weapon and, really getting down and dirty and finding something that's going to save lives will mean nothing if the proper paperwork ain't done to back up that search. Would you agree with that, Russ?
In the end, I see. I don't know. They complain about the paperwork. It's not that much. It's not that bad. You've got to roll up someone if the weapon or whatever the contraband is controlled, right? You got to ship them off the SEG. You have to write your report. It's, I don't know why people make such a big deal of it. And then to say that you're going to be sloppy in order that you don't have to write the report. Do you know how much paperwork is required when one of us is assaulted with a weapon or killed in the line of duty? You think that might not be a little bit more paperwork than you're used to? I damn sure think it probably is.
Yeah, you know what, guys? Russ is on point. Check this out. Usually I don't share a lot of stories, but because we're on a live feed, it's not a prepared topic. It makes me think. So I went to Oklahoma I think it was like 2018. It was for the National Honors for Corrections, and I was a keynote speaker for them. And we had a discussion. It was a very good discussion about charges and how inmates keep on beating the charges because admin's not supportive of the charges. So when we were having this dialogue and I was videoing it, I stopped the camera and I said, guys, that's not always the case. I have seen in my career some badly written charges or people that just aren't invested in the charge to even get the inmate's name right, or the location where they found the weapon, or just little discrepancies. Or I have seen cases go to the disciplinary hearing officer where the inmate wants to witness and then, or wants to call the officer to the table. Now, mind you, when that happens, they are allowed to question that officer, but the question has to be approved by the disciplinary hearing officer. At least that's for the policies I'm familiar with. So they can't cross-examine. It's like, these are the 5 questions or whatever it is. And, this is what you get to ask. And then you constantly see the officer answering, well, see my report. See my report. see my report. So the thing is sometimes we could be our worst enemy by not going the extra mile with those charges. And then when the inmates beat the charge, some of us would be quick to blame the system and all this other stuff. But then when you actually take that officer back and say, listen, I heard you've been saying that admin just dropped the charge because we don't care. Well, let's take a look at how you wrote this charge. Let's take a look at where the mistakes are. You have the wrong inmate's name down. You have the wrong number. This is not where you found it. All the times on the reports are wrong. And then the supervisor that's supposed to bring the reports together and sign off on them didn't even read them because they sign off on them and none of the reports match at all. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying they're identical. That's not what I'm asking. What I'm saying is the times are off. The locations are off. The inmates are off. It's just the supervisor's there to make sure that there's a story being told. And that if this ever goes to the highest level, which could be the courts, can people on the outside understand that story? And if the disciplinary hearing officer cannot understand that story, I will guarantee you in this day and age, the inmates will beat that charge. So the best thing here is, guys, be invested in the charge and make it tough for the inmates to beat it. Make it tough for the DHO to throw it out, because even if you have a DHO that is pro-inmate, you could still make it hard for them to throw out those charges. Because in the end, if we spell our case properly, they're not going to have anything that they can do. They're going to have to push it forward. But do you see that problem sometimes, Russ, when you were in the field?
Yeah, I always like to say that, if you want to hold a crucifixion, you got to bring the nails, right? And that involves a lot of different things. And I'll just do this real quick. All right. If you want a context framework for your mind to know what you should put in your report, it's really simple, right? Think of this word. I'm going to give you a definition for it: probative. All right. Probative just means, does it have value in proving whether something did or didn't happen, right? So you put everything in there: who, what, when, where. Sometimes if it's about you, you put why, because sometimes you have to justify a use of force, or you have to justify why you did something. That's probably about the only time you put why in there. And then the next thing that you do is you include all those things that tend to point towards some kind of evidence. I mean, it was near the inmate, or there was some other piece of property that was identifiable as his that was next to the weapon, or whatever it is. Does it have probative value? Well, then you include it in your report. All right. So you just gotta think ahead of time, how you're going to nail this thing down. I never gave anyone any reason to ever put themselves in a position to question my report, unless it was one of those reports where I was writing up 200 or 300 people, and it was all based on a giant crime scene that I was doing with regard to a riot or something like that. But on a one-on-one, man, I hit all of those points and make sure that I didn't get anything but a conviction.
Hey guys, just a little side note before we move forward. Do got the book on the market, the inmate manipulation book. And also we're going to be speaking in Nebraska. So the whole panel is going to be out in Nebraska around August. There's a Nebraska conference going on. I think it's a jail conference. So we'll be out there, the panel. And sorry guys, I know sometimes you see me looking to the right because I'm reading the comments. And also, we are doing a virtual for a conference in Arizona, the International Association of Corrections Training Professionals. That's in October. That's a virtual conference. So look into that. It's the whole panel. And we're going to just have an interactive dialogue. I'm looking forward to it, kind of like what we're doing here. Okay, so the next question, this is a good question too. How many inmates are allowed out of their cells at the same time? And what ratio COs to inmates is usually required for safety? Okay, so guys, this really depends on the agency. But there are some standards through the ACA. But having said that, it also depends on the level of the inmate. So I would say this. So let's say you work in a full-min unit. What I would like to see is, and we've done this before, 2 officers in the dorm, minimal, and then 1 officer eye in the sky. And again, you have that officer on the dorm. That's your immediate backup. Hopefully that second officer deters, as opposed to when you're by yourself. Inmates could just at any time take you down. So that second officer should be a deterrent. Plus, if the officer's carrying a baton, then the second officer carrying the baton is a backup to that. But technically, you got to be very careful when you're carrying weapons into a dorm. At any time, those weapons can be taken away. But again, as long as you have the backup, you definitely don't want to be doing that by yourself. And then you also have the person in the sky watching over you. So at that point, you could have a lot of inmates out and you're just patrolling the dorm. For areas that are locked down, again, it depends. If it's a very restrictive housing unit, you may have minimal 2 up to 5 officers for every inmate that's got to be moved. And that could even increase. But for the most part, corrections has changed. The world is a little bit more moving. So you're going to see sometimes where there's just one officer surrounded by 60 or 70 inmates, maybe even more. And that's sad because it should never be that way. But that, unfortunately, is the world that we're in. I think the proper ratio, I want to say, guys, it's never going to be in our favor. I want to say it's like, well, I don't know, but you know what? I will say this, guys. It's never, one officer versus every inmate. The inmates aren't usually united like that. It's probably just usually a smaller group. That's why it's very important for us as management, but also as custody and whatever it is that we don't give anything for the inmates to unite on. That could be anything. That's why the JPay system or the grievance system is very important, because it gives inmates a chance to voice their concerns. Sad thing is, most of the time they lie, but there are some that will be true, and it gives them that outlet so they don't unite. So I'll give you something, guys. Let's say you have a rogue officer who just, is just a rogue officer, and everywhere they go, they just, they're disrespectful. Everywhere they go, every unit they work in, inmates have problems. If we don't address that one officer starts uniting the population. So now we have a greater concern where now you have the inmates, one uniting, but having a reason to unite. And where that's also a bigger concern is on a dorm. Dorms are opened, and don't get me wrong. I mean, it's open. You're going to have gangs in there. So you're going to have inmates that are united. But when you start seeing all these inmates come together as a whole, that has to be addressed. That can even happen when you have a policy like, okay, when we did away with smoking. That wasn't something where you could just go into the dorm and say, okay, everybody, you're done smoking, we're collecting cigarettes. The whole fucking population would turn against you. They would go after the officer who's trying to implement that. That had to be done gradually. That had to be saying, okay, guys, in 3 months, this is what we're going to do. So you would have some inmates that would slowly get, phase it out. And then some that could be a problem, but you're knocking those numbers down. But for some people are like, well, your authority, just go in there and take it away. Guys, if you take it away and all the inmates feel that that's their right to have it, they're going to unite. And that officer that's been issued that order, you just put that officer's life at risk. So again, you got to do what you can to not have the inmates unite. But to kind of answer Venom's question, it's never really us versus all of them. It's usually a selected few. And at that point, we should be able to maintain some level of control for the most part. But what's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Well, yeah, you just have to, it's that level of control and those things that you don't want the inmates to unite behind, the things that stretch across those, those ethnic boundaries, across those STG boundaries, which oftentimes are at least part and parcel of the same thing. And, there's some things that they're going to unite behind anyway, especially maybe if you are just doing your job and you're intercepting dope and you're holding them to a level of accountability that they don't want to be held to. But most of the things, when I talk about unity and stuff, are the simple things. It's food, it's having some kind of leisure activity, it's access to medical, and it's also having a redress for legitimate gripes. A lot of times you'll hear them and they'll gripe about this and they'll gripe about that, but they won't ever put it to paper because they know it's not legitimate.
Right. And another good question too. And guys, just to be aware, now you can kind of see why admin chases after those grievances. Now, even though, most may not be valid, there could be that one. And when inmates feel that grievance system is not working, that they're not getting the response that they want, they will up their next attempt. And what they're going to do is, well, the grievance system isn't working. I'm going to go ahead now and, make sure they hear my voice, which could be an act of aggression. So again, you can see sometimes why management chases after those grievances And we do want honest responses. We do want supervisors that are looking into these concerns and addressing it. We don't want people that are just, oh, here's another grievance and giving us a BS answer, because we're going to find out soon enough. And when incidences happen, like food strikes or riots, one of the things that they have us do now is go back and check the grievance system, go back and check the IRS and make sure that, hey, was this concern ever mentioned? And then when you find out it was, well, what was your action to it? What did you do? And then you go back to the person it was assigned to and say, you told me this. So what happened here? So again, those grievance systems really, again, if they're used correctly, they could stop a potential threat on our safety and well-being. So I do expect the supervisors to take that seriously. Now, again, you could be chasing something because you get those inmates that are telling those stories, but there could be that one time where it's true. And sometimes we've got to weed through the bullshit to get to what has the most weight. That was a great question. Hey, Jose Gomez, we're talking about the paperwork for you. He goes, I hate paperwork with a passion, but I don't mind doing it to back up my COs. I'm going to be stuck in the office, but if it's right, I got you. I spent hours on off days doing packets, but it's worth. That's what Russ said, guys. Again, these are the things that are going to matter. So make sure you get that paperwork right. So when it's presentable, because it will make its way up to the courts, you can confidently say that, you've done, you did what you had to do to make sure that that charge or whatever it is sticks. So Xavier said, have you ever toured or worked with other facilities outside of the USA? What's your impression? So no, I have not. I've worked with a lot of facilities here, county jails, state facilities. Our training videos are used all across the country, but I've never worked with a facility outside of the USA. I'm assuming one day it's going to happen, because even the book I wrote, it's being used in different areas of the world, Australia, Guyana, you name it, parts of Africa, Guyana, but other parts of Africa. And I would like the opportunity just to get to see. But in the meantime, right now, my focus is really here, because, this is my home and this is what I'm most familiar with. I'm more familiar with our practices. Okay, so the next question, Justin Marty, how do you go about rules that you want to enforce in your dorm, but then your sergeant comes and the inmates ask him or her and they say they're fine with it? You want me to answer, or Russ, you want to attack that first?
I would love to take that one. Okay, so this is one of those situations where your sergeant is not paying attention to the way the chain of command should work, right? Is that the inmates approaching him, he should be referring them directly back to you. That's the way it's supposed to work. What he's doing is he's fostering a situation that tends to make the inmates what I refer to as being very chesty. They can get away, they can approach you, you can't do a thing to them. It's time for a wake-up call and for this to be explained to this particular sergeant as to what's happening and why it behooves him to not have this avenue open to him. When inmates would approach me, the first thing I would always ask them is, do you have permission to talk to me? And they would look at me like I was crazy. And I would say, you have to have permission from the officer that runs your area over there to talk to me. And I would send them back. And this is a way that really, it's actually very helpful to the sergeant that's implementing that policy too, because it forces the officer to have to deal with them on a level, and it puts the officer in a position where, he gets to call the shot, but he's also accountable for that shot. So that's what we want to do. We want to start moving this back into the proper way. So you need to have a sit down with that sergeant and say, hey, look, you can't override me on these things. And, I'm trying to establish this, and maybe I'm trying to get the dorms more clean, or maybe I'm trying to, cut down on some of the riffraff that's happening, some of the contraband peddling, some of the back and forth, whatever it is that's your vision. And I need you to back me on this, not fight me on it. Because what happens is these particular supervisors, they kind of just want to glide and go the easy way. And it seems easy until it gets hard and bad shit starts happening. And believe me, I've seen it 1,000 times. So it's just time to explain to him how that works, how the chain of command works, and how this stuff about, hey, he needs to send the inmates back to deal with you not deal with him directly, and he needs to back your call, whatever it is. Now, if you make the wrong call, he needs to quietly go behind the inmate's back and get with you and say, hey, look, I know that that's what you want to do, but I need you to back off in this area, or I need you to reestablish this. And yes, they can have that thing. It says so in the book. Sorry, you were wrong. But just this constant, of cutting you off at the knees, not acceptable. So someone just needs to explain it to him.
Yeah, hey guys, this is actually mentioned in my book because it's about the perception of authority. So supervisors need to protect the officer's perception of authority. It's exactly what Russ said. If I'm an officer and I give a directive to an inmate and the inmate manages to get around me and go to my supervisor, who then changes my directive, well, one thing is the supervisor's just become an open doorway for that inmate. And the second thing is you just took my power of control. So what the supervisor needs to do is exactly what Russ said is, my objective as a supervisor is, however I solve this issue, I need to make sure that my officer maintains that perception of authority. Good night, Mama. Always a pleasure. Check out our channel, guys. My objective as a supervisor is always to protect my officer's authority, which means that if the officer is correct, I'm going to ask him, what did the officer say? The officer said this, and that's the answer. I'm not here to run the unit for the officer. That's the answer. So right back, send them right back to the officer.
Hey, Anthony, if I just interject real quick, this is one reason why you have to interrupt some of these supervisors and managers that want to do things like they start these so-called, it's supposed to be very enlightened open door policies, right? Open door policies are a real problem because they short circuit all of that, and they take all the power away from the officer. And then suddenly you have staff that are justified in being lazy because nothing they do has any impact anyway. So I find one of the things that's really helpful, though, is giving you guys these concepts and the words to use to be able to go back to these people and have a sit down with them and say, hey, look, this is why what you're doing is so detrimental. Because a lot of times we identify things and we know that it's wrong and that it's stupid, but sometimes we don't always necessarily quite have the words or understand why we're having that really visceral reaction to it.
Yeah, guys, if you look at it this way, picture the perception of authority as a football. So you go in, you give the inmate a directive, they kind of go around your back. Now your perception of authority, you can ask the question, Jeff, get asked, we're still answering. So the perception of authority is up in the air. Now it's up to the supervisor what they're going to do with that ball. Are they going to give it back to you, or are they going to give it to the inmate? So again, what they need to do is they need to make sure that ball goes back to you, that you're the one that's in control. And even if you made a mistake, like Russ said, there's ways that they can have you go back and correct it, and you could still maintain, well, one is your integrity, but you could also maintain that perception of authority. So if you have a supervisor that's kind of doing that, one thing is the supervisor is definitely weak. But second thing is you need to get on that person, because at the end, if they want to run the unit, then why the hell are you there? Jeffrey Dahmer's asked, can I work inside a correctional facility with a face tattoo? That's a concern. The face tattoo is a concern.
That's what it is. It's up to each department and what they've got out there. But it could be problematic. It may not be. A lot of it's going to depend on your ability to explain what it means and whether or not they feel that you're going to, fit in with what their vision of their particular policies are.
Never Say Die said, love the channel and content. Thank you for all the insight. And yeah, we love giving it, guys. If it's religious, it's still a tough battle. I've seen some states, I believe my state's having an issue with that right now. Religion being a right, that's going to be up to the agency if they want to fight that battle. But they do look for uniformity. But if it's religious, that may be a way to get out of that. But again, guys, it really depends on the agency, because if agencies want to fight that, they could lose, or it's tough because we're dealing with something similar with that right now. And okay, he's saying California, it's tough, guys, again, because they look for that uniformity, and technically it stands you out. But if it's religious, that's a whole different ball game. Religion is a right. So again, if you could document the fact that that's religious, you may have a fight on your hands.
Too, though, that even though it may truly be religious, there are a lot of STGs out there that co-opt a lot of different, symbols and terminology and stuff. And so it still might be looked at unfavorably. And I just say that from a position of, having dealt with all of this stuff. I've had various inmates tell me that things that they had were religious, that I couldn't validate their tattoos because they were religious. And so you can justify it and you can get past it, but it is going to be called into question because we've dealt with some of these issues in the past before.
Yeah, so I don't want to say it's 100% no, because again, you do have it could be
you have to start the baseline. Those you have to look at whatever the policy is. That's not a policy that I would have looked at any time in the recent past. So I wouldn't feel comfortable telling you for sure one way or the other. Google it and make sure that it's the latest, greatest, and then look and see if there is a religious exception to it. And then whatever that religion is or whatever, see if you can find some other current CDCR types that are also of that religion. If you get with me behind the scenes, I still know everyone in CDCR. I'd be happy to try and help you with regards to that specific one.
Yeah, I'm going to put my EED hat on because I dealt with this before. So sometimes, let's say you have officers that maybe female officers that are Muslim that want to wear the Muslim garb. And sometimes we're able to say no because the uniform policy does demand uniformity. And that could override the right of the persons to practice that part of their religion because the uniform policy is extremely demanding and has a purpose. So I don't know if that falls into the tattoo side of it all. I assume it could because that's part of that uniformity. So if they push that into that uniformity, then yes, the agency can push and say that that's inappropriate. It doesn't fit and therefore breaks away from our uniform policy. And the uniform policy is usually protected. Guys, it's usually protected because we've had that I know of instances where people have challenged that and the uniform policy does supersede that part of that religious practice. And that's what, unfortunately it is what it is. So I actually think that the uniform policy may hold some weight if it is going to be a battle between the tattoo and the religion. But again, nothing's 100%. It depends on how far the agency wants to go with that. Now, guys, you can keep on asking questions. If not, we'll start to wrap it up. But in the meantime, this was a great dialogue. Hopefully we can be able to do this more often and get a great response. We're up to 17 now. So if you guys have more questions, if not, we'll be heading off shortly. So I'll give you guys a few more minutes. But in the meantime, Russ, this was actually I actually have a couple of topics out of this.
Yeah, it's definitely a fertile ground for that. I just want to, while we're getting ready to wrap this up, I just want to say thank you to everyone that, asked these questions and stuff. It's a great way for us to be able to, help you guys out, but also to expand our reach. Please, if you can, think about, hey, advertising this on your page on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, just mention Tear Talk. All right. And if you're so inclined, if you want to come on Facebook and you are a corrections professional, come on in there on Keepers of Chaos. We'd love to have you. We vet every single officer that we can coming in there, and anyone who also is just a worker in corrections, because I feel that those people really need an extra leg up with regards to how security works and how not to become victimized by inmates.
Yeah, so again, this was a great dialogue. We're wrapping it up. What I'll do one day is I'll try to get the panel on. I'll try to get a few of us on at once so we all have questions, ask it to the specific panel member. But we do have a lot of videos coming out. It's great if you share it. I'm trying to get to 20,000 by the end of the year. I mean, so far we're not doing that bad, but I think I'll be 1,000 under. I think I'll hit probably close to 19. We just crossed the $16,000 threshold. We're also going to see the content also get a little bit more diverse. Yeah, you know what, Kavanaugh, we'll definitely be doing stuff about retirees. I'll bring on Gary York. I'll have Russ, Gary Cornelius. I have a few people on that retired that can tell you exactly the plans that they took. I also want to kind of I want to have people from the programming side on, the medical side, because ultimately what we want to do is we want to start bringing this profession together. We want to have everybody working together as one. If I can give you guys one advice real quick is that, and it worked for me, is that when you get a chance, especially if you're a rookie right now, when you're learning the job, learn everything, look to the left and right, see how the departments interact, because at the end, guys, we really do have to work together. If we don't work together, guys, we're not going to move anywhere. And guys, the way corrections is moving, it's going to happen, so we can't be left behind. We're going to have to start looking at what the other side is expecting, and hopefully we could become a voice that way. Hey, Rich says, I'm so grateful for this channel. I've been watching since I was considering applying to now being in the academy. It's really helped me out so much. I'll pass on the channel to my classmates. See, Rich, that matters, because that goes to show you that, what's funny? One last thing. So I've been thinking of the impact that I want to have. Rich says, thank you. I've been thinking about the impact that we want to have with the channel. And the channel really is about creating a movement for correction so we're respected. But I realize that we have to respect ourselves first and what we do. But in the long run, guys, I realized something. So I've connected to a lot of good figures on LinkedIn, a lot of powerful figures. We're going to see them on the show soon, department heads or executive staff. But you know what I also realized, guys, is that the people that follow this channel, the ones that are new, they're also career oriented. So Tier Talk has made an investment in some really good future talent. So one day when I'm retired, I would love to see someone like Rich come out and say, hey, Gange, I'm awarded now, or Gange, I'm a commissioner now, or whatever it is. And I can go back and say, hey, Russ, remember this kid? Remember when he was just the rookie? It means the world to us to know that in the end, you find value in what we do, and that's what motivates us to keep on going. And M. Kavanaugh said, can retirees join Keepers of Chaos? And yes, they can. Yeah, yes, they can. All right, guys, take care, guys. As always. Oh, wait, hold on, Chaos. Someday after I get out, I'm able to speak more freely about my experiences. I would love to be on with you, but that will be a few years down the road, so I expect 500K by then. You know what, Chaos? Beth, once you're retired, all you got to do is email me and say Chaos is ready, and you're on, brother. You've been with me for so long. I will never forget who you are. You have my word. You have my word. I'll see you then. Bye, bro. Bye, Jeff. Take care, guys. Bear with me, guys. I don't know how to. There it is. I got it. Bye, guys. Stay safe. And I thank you, Andrea. Oh, Andrea, she recommends your book to all. Andrea, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Hopefully.